20 years in the business, and it wasn't easy. People tell me all the time, Ramin, how did you launch a business from your home office and expand it globally and lasted 2 decades and still growing? Well, today I'm going to share with you 10 things you must have, the mindset protocols, pitfalls you must know about if you want your business to last 20 years. So I'm going to give you the pathway to 20 in this video. Let's get started. The very first thing, especially when you first get started, you must establish right away some targets for what I call business reserve. When I first started Opulence, I still had my home office. So we didn't have an office expense, but we had expenses. I had one person that worked with me at the time. And my very first point was to get an office. As we got some sales, we got ourselves a small office at 250 square feet. I started figuring out we want to have 6 months of reserve in the account at all time. At that time, I needed $8,000. So my first target was $8,000 in the reserve. And we didn't take any salaries. We'll get to that a bit later. We want to make sure to get to that $8,000 reserve, which at that time was a 6-month reserve. As your business grows, then you realize that $8,000 is not really much if you want to maintain this very important 6-month reserve fund. Then my next target was $25,000. So as my revenue grew, I didn't keep my reserve the same because the reality of business expenses wasn't what it was when I was at home. So then it was $25,000. When I hit $25,000, it was, if I get $100,000 in the account, I will never go out of business. When we hit $100,000, of course, now you got a bigger office, you got more expenses, you got more employees. Then you start to think, does $100,000 really have a 6-month reserve? It doesn't. So your reserve has to expand with the size of your business. One mistake a lot of people make is that the business grows, they have no reserve, they spend the money, and one hardship, they were out of business. I remember that then from $25,000, $100,000, $250,000, then I said, if we're $1 million, I will just sleep well at night. I remember it was TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival, had the presidential suite downtown Toronto. I brought in my top executive and we popped the champagne and they said, what's this for? As a team, today we officially have $1 million in our reserve account. I remember this was in 2009 and it was just amazing. So it came to a point that $1 million, eventually we had like 10 million in your reserve account. The point is this, you have to make sure that your reserve account matches the size of your business. I've seen very successful businesses go out of business because when they hit something like COVID, all of a sudden they don't have the backing to keep them going. Yet I've seen other businesses, well, although the employees were not working during COVID, they kept it on full salary to keep their employees, as we did, to go through this valley. Point number 2, take your salary, especially in the first year, based on the percentage of what's possible and not what you actually need. You can't kill the golden goose just because you have other expenses. You have to maintain the golden goose to keep giving you golden eggs until it grows to a point that you can get to the salary that you want. When I launched Opulence Global, the very first year, it was only 2 of us, and I was a CEO, and I was taking $500 a month. Obviously, I made my first $1 million at age 25. I already had a big house, big car, so that did not cover my expenses. But you see, I knew that the company could not afford it. So I had to live off my own, and my vice president at the time made $300 a month. That was the first year. As a matter of fact, it took me 5 years to give myself even a $50,000 a year income, which again, even for me at that time, it wasn't that much. I had people that were producers for me. I was paying $20,000 a month. So they're making over $250,000 a year while I'm giving myself $50,000 a year. I was the owner, I accepted that. I was feeding the business so I can get to a point. Believe me, when you have that type of mindset, by the year 20, you're gonna live very, very well. So get paid based on the percentage of what's possible and not what you need, because otherwise you will kill the golden goose and the business can't survive. Point number 3, when you launch a business, set high targets. If your target is just you pay your bills, you won't last because of peaks and valleys in sales cycles. So if you are go hit a valley and your targets aren't high enough, guess what? You won't make it. You gotta have high targets. It's a motivation factor. And when you get to these peaks, you put enough money on the side to be able to accommodate the next valley. When I started Opulence in my home office, day one, I said we're gonna build the billion. That was a motto. Even today, 21 years later, our people globally, they still talk about building the billion. It's not because I did a billion, it wasn't the case. I needed motivation for the past 20 years to keep coming to work, because if you reach your targets, you lose your motivation. So set high targets that you know you're committed next 10, 15, 20 years. But that is only backed by the energy of your targets. And if you don't have that, and all of a sudden year 2, year 3, your life becomes comfortable, and because you don't have that big target, you run out of motivation, business, your employees run out of motivation, and the business won't last. Point number 4, invest in your customers. I mean, we all go outside, we all shop, and I see how business owners run their business, and I can criticize 90% of them. Look, if your customer is not happy, we have a motto in our company, Opulence. We said, find a way to say yes. We're in business for a long time. E-commerce, over 1.5 million customers served. We have an A+ rating, BBB rating, because for us, it's about finding the way to say yes. Whether they're right or wrong, it's not that important. So find a way to say yes, and that's how you duplicate your customer base. That's how you get the reviews. That's how you get the referrals. Most important, get the referrals. Zig Ziglar says, give enough people what they want, and you'll get what you want. It's not about you giving something and you getting what you want. It's not about that. Give enough people what they want, and you get what you want. One is a long-term mindset. One is a short-term mindset. And IBM did a study years ago, and it was a customer retention. They spent millions of dollars into psychology and customer psychology and sales psychology. And here's what they came up with. It's far less expensive, economical, to maintain your existing customer than to try to create a new one. So when you have a customer, do all that you can to keep him happy. Point number 5. One of the early advice I got when I launched my business, I met a gentleman called John Anka. You know his brother, Paul Anka, the big singer. I met him at a restaurant, a very fancy restaurant in Ottawa. The restaurant was closed. I knew the owner. The owner arranged it for me to meet him. He was worth $750 million at that time. So I asked him, I love interviewing people like that. I was a 24-year-old, 25-year-old young man. I asked him, one advice, if you're going to give me, what would it be if I want to build a large business? I was shocked by his answer. He says, get the best legal team behind you. And I'm thinking, as a 25-year-old, what in a legal team? I'm a good person, I don't do anything wrong. So take 1% of your revenue and put it away every month. And you might not need it for a few years, but there'll be time you're gonna need it. And you know what? I took the advice. Outside what I thought it was necessary, I took the advice. Look, you know, in this day and age, but people can do a lawsuit. And when that happens, you have to be prepared. What if CRA comes after you for taxes? You must have good representation. In our 4th year, give you a personal story, CRA came to us and said that we owed them like $3.5 million. We owed them 0. I knew that we owed them 0. But it was a situation we ran into a really bad person who was not very fond of immigrants, as he put it. Long story short, we fought that fight, hired the best accounting firm in the country. We fought it for 12 years, spent $220,000, and we won that case, and they had to pay us interest for the money that seized. But it took 12 years and the best legal team in the country. Had I not taken John Anka's advice a dozen years ago, I would have not been able to hire the best representation, and that type of assessment of $4 million when we were 3 years old would have taken us out of the game completely. Very important. If you have a plan to build a big company, make sure you have a reserve fund for your legal and professionals, which is your law and your accounting. Point number 6, as your business grows, never trust your bank and your merchant system. Because for no reason at all, they can come back at you and say, you're no longer processing your credit cards, and now you're stuck. Or your bank can come and say, we no longer want to carry your business, and they do it all the time, and they do not give you a reason. Now, it's a personal story. In 2009, just before Christmas, and we're an e-com business, so everything we do is through e-commerce and merchant system. And the company that had processed us for 4 years, we had perfect track record with them. All of a sudden, they happened to do a search, and they realized, oh, we do not support direct sales in e-commerce businesses. And they gave me 21 days to find another merchant system. Back in 2009, there was no banks that did that. So I convinced them to continue charging my customers, because all we do is e-commerce. Everything is online, and not pay me the money. Just keep charging till I can find someone. Well, it took me 4 months to find a company, a bank that was willing, merchant system that was willing to take over our account. 4 months, zero revenue, and I have to pay commissions to thousands of people. I ran a conference that was pre-planned in March. In the middle of that, the conference alone cost me $400,000. I had to do all of that. Not a single person knew what was going on in the background. Why? Again, we had good money managers. We had good reserve funds to deal with that. Most importantly, I learned a very important lesson. Never put your eggs in one basket. Just because you do more, it doesn't mean your bank appreciates it. As a matter of fact, they told me point blank that your business gets to a point that it goes to different departments, and now they're going to scrutinize you even more. If they don't understand your business, like doing international businesses, then they decide maybe they can't carry the risk. I remember one bank told me, we cannot do your private banking anymore because we happen to have customers in Nigeria. Just because we did business in Africa, they didn't want to. This is what type of things that happen as your business grows. So never trust your bank, your merchant system. They want your business until the regulatory on their bank comes at them. So make sure you always split your bank backup to the backup to the backup, as well as your merchant system. So make sure if something happens one place, nothing changes for you. A quick switch over, and your business will be fine. Point number 7. Always invest into automation and software. Just because your business grows more doesn't mean you have to cost you more in labor. Over the last 20 years, we built a very robust back end. It's like a $3 million software. We literally should have about 5 or 6 times the amount of employees that we do in our office in Toronto, in Bangkok, in Manila, different places, but we don't because it's centralized through a software system. So if you're selling things, just make sure that you keep investing into a software. These days with technology it's easier. With us we have in-house developers, but you don't have to do that. It's important that you try to automate as much as you can. Now, when you do that, you also have to think about cybersecurity. There's a lot of stuff going on with bots and hackers. And again, we've learned over time that because we're very cautious, backup to the backup to the backup, that I told you about earlier, that if someone tries to do something and hack into your system and try to get ransom from you, we're up and running in 2 hours on the next server. So make sure cybersecurity, again, if you're building a big business, don't get caught. Make sure that you have 2 things. One, you have backup to the backup. You got mirroring system on different servers, different parts of the world. Second, you want to make sure that you consult with a cybersecurity company to prevent these hacks from happening. Point number 8, if you're selling anything, you got on e-commerce. Why e-commerce? Well, first of all, if there's a shutdown like we had in COVID, e-commerce companies did not shut down. Our business was fine. While the whole country was shut down, we were fine because we're an e-commerce business. Sell something online. And social media, really important. In this day and age, the very first thing people do, they check your socials. And stop posting personal stuff if you're in business, period. If you have a social media page, only business. So when people try to gauge your business and services and value, they could see. A good looking social media is like you dressing up in a nice suit or a nice business outfit. People judge the book by its cover. So make sure You make some calls, not that expensive. Get some people for a few $100s a month. You can get people that actually can help you with your social media. Very, very important. Number 9, stay humble. I deal with people all the time, and they got some success, and all of a sudden they act like, you know, they've done top of the world, and all of a sudden they even got way too much ego for their customers. Don't make that mistake. I've seen over and over again, billion-dollar companies go to zero. Billion-dollar companies go to zero just because the success was so huge. Billions a lot. This is billion a year in revenue, and all of a sudden they start doing the little things that got them there. Next you know, as they had mass entry, they get mass exit. The minute in this day and age that you get some bad reviews, the name gets out that you're not providing the service that you charge for, you know what? You don't get recurring customers, because what's happening right now is that recurring customers are even more important than, it's very expensive to acquire new customers, right? So by not keeping your old customers, you're on a treadmill going nowhere. So put aside your ego, always give more than you expect to get back. It's okay to give more, and you know what happens? You're going to duplicate that sale into lifetime of sales. So put aside the ego, make sure that you stay humble as your business grows. And last question people ask me a lot is that, so what is your vision for Opulence? Well, the original vision was building the billion. So, you know, that's why it's so important that 21 years ago, when I set that up, I'm still chasing that dream, still motivated. So we're still going for that. We still want to create 1,000 millionaires in our network. We have our brands to be more recognized globally, our designer brands, our health brands, to be expanding all across the world, more offices around the world. So these are the type of targets that we have that keeps us going, waking up in the morning, keeping us late at night, every single night. I always say life is not about achieving happiness. It's about happily achieving. It's always about the next. If you don't have those next targets, life becomes meaningless. Hope these 10 points will help you expand your business globally and beyond your imagination.